Morgan Freeman should be exposed for what he's done.
I watched somebody get murdered, and there was nothing I could do but call the police.
Oh my God.
Listen,
wow.
It's reality, man.
E'Dena, turn off that light.
Yes, please.
E'Dena Hines was found around 3 a.m. on Sunday. She had multiple stab wounds. There were multiple witnesses, one of whom had called 911. Hines was just about 100 feet away from the building where she lived with the suspect, Lamar Davenport.
She says Morgan Freeman molested her and he caused this. He did this. Lamar Davenport's mother yelled, "He's innocent. It was an accident," she insisted.
I don't like it. It's like the brother. Turn the light off.
I don't know what light you're talking about.
Yeah, but turn the light off. I don't care if what you're doing you do, but take that light away from me. I don't want that light there.
Yes, please.
Am I to walk toward it and die? Turn that off.
I don't know what the light is.
You don't know how to stop that? It's killing me.
Lamar Davenport is accused of stabbing the actress 16 times during a bizarre exorcism.
Which made it really convenient for Morgan, because if he was exposed by E'Dena for having a relationship, his career would be over.
Some people say that Morgan Freeman is a sexual deviant of some kind, who had a sexual relationship with his step-granddaughter for 10 years, from ages 17 to 27. And these people also say that his granddaughter's murder was rather convenient for Morgan Freeman, because then he didn't get Me Too'd by E'Dena. And of course, some people say that this is a big conspiracy from Hollyweird filled with pedophilia. Well, it would be a phebophilia, but really who's counting? Let's explore this and see if there's any validity to these claims. But first, let's discuss the people involved. Most people know who Morgan Freeman is.
Are we on? Are we on?
He's been in many very popular films, including Shawshank Redemption, Seven, Driving Miss Daisy, The Dark Knight Trilogy, Invictus, Now You See Me, and Bruce Almighty.
You've been doing a lot of complaining about me, Bruce. Quite frankly, I'm tired of it.
Morgan Freeman has been married twice. He married his first wife, Jeanette Adair Bradshaw, in 1967, and they divorced in 1979.
Jeanette had a daughter from a previous relationship named Dina. They became a family, and Morgan still refers to Dina as his daughter to this day.
He married his second wife, Myrna Lee, in 1984, and their marriage ended in September 2010.
They didn't have any children of their own, but Morgan and Myrna took in his stepdaughter, Dina, and raised her as their own.
E'Dena Hines is Morgan Freeman's step-granddaughter.
E'Dena Hines, Morgan Freeman's beloved granddaughter, often walked the red carpet at his side.
Morgan is 45 years older than E'Dena, and he had been part of her life ever since she was a little girl.
The granddaughter of Morgan's first wife, but she was raised by Morgan and his second wife, Myrna.
Described herself as quite loud and just this energetic character.
Have you been here before?
E'Dena was an actress appearing in the film 5 Flights Up, which was released last May. She played a receptionist alongside her grandfather and actress Diane Keaton.
If you'll just take this paperwork right over there, someone will be with you in just a moment.
She was also on Broadway in the 2012 production of A Raisin in the Sun.
I'm E'Dena and I'm playing the mean barista.
And here she is in an episode of the ABC show What Would You Do? The customers don't know she's an actress and think she's just a rude coffee shop barista.
I want to make sure I get your order right because I don't want you to be complaining later.
E'Dena Hines dates a man named Lamar Davenport, and they live together in a condo in New York City.
Lamar Davenport is an aspiring actor and wannabe rapper.
They had a somewhat troubled relationship, but for the most part seemed to be a happy couple to those around them. That is, until the night of August 16th, 2015.
This is a recent photo of the couple seen at dinner with a friend who says he was with them in the hours before the tragedy and things seemed fine.
Oh my God.
Listen,
wow.
It's reality, man.
E'Dena, turn off that light.
Yes, please.
Even though these two had a great time at dinner, they have problems. And at this point, they keep accusing each other of being unfaithful in their relationship, which I guess led to E'Dena being killed.
It happened right here in the middle of the street. E'Dena Hines was reportedly stabbed 16 times with a hunting knife in what's being called a deranged act of exorcism by her boyfriend.
Police say 33-year-old E'Dena Hines was stabbed to death early yesterday morning in front of her New York City home by a man who they believe was her boyfriend. Witnesses say Lamar Davenport appeared to be performing some kind of exorcism. He was taken to the hospital for a psychiatric evaluation.
In the early hours of August 16th, 2015, Lamar Davenport and E'Dena Hines were outside their apartment. And for some reason, they began arguing about something. Lamar chases E'Dena and tackles her in the street. He hovers over her body, holding her down. With a knife in his hands, he begins plunging it into her chest, screaming,
"Demon, be out. Demon, I command you, be gone."
There are many witnesses to this murder.
And I saw her laying on the ground right here. She wasn't moving.
He was like kneeling over her, screaming about God has arisen. I mean, he was totally off the ranch.
I watched somebody get murdered. And there was nothing I could do but call the police.
Ultimately, Lamar is going to be in prison for a very long time for doing this. He was sentenced to 20 years in jail, which means he'll be like in his 40s or maybe early 50s when he's released.
And now this is really where things start to take a twist. Because people will say that this murder was very convenient for Morgan Freeman because it gets him out of these accusations that he was sexually involved with E'Dena. And while the National Enquirer originally broke this story, Sloan has spelled this out more clearly than anyone, so this video is mostly a reply to him and his video. I recommend that you watch it for yourself, which is why I put a link in the comments and up in the annotation. But I think I spell out his argument pretty clearly using his own clips here, so if you watch the video, let me know if you think I missed something or misunderstood his argument somehow. So I see Sloan's case as being this. 1. Insiders tell the National Enquirer that E'Dena confesses to Myrna that Morgan tried to have sex with her when she was 17, but they stopped just short of intercourse.
But we found out about this affair because Morgan was divorcing his wife, Myrna, who he had been with for about 25 years. A bunch of insiders went to the press and shared what they know. Myrna said that E'Dena told her that when she was a teenager, she and Morgan went to dinner at a friend's house one evening. Both had been drinking, and when they returned home, Morgan attempted to have sex with her. They stopped just short of having intercourse.
So the first thing I want to address is the idea of insiders. As far as I can tell, there is one source that spoke to the National Enquirer. All sources except for Radar Online call them the source or an insider.
A source close to the family. A source close to the family.
And Radar Online was in the middle of a reconstruction in 2009, so there is no record of the original article to be found on their website. So as far as I can tell, there is one source, and this story flows from there. The source is also anonymous and likely paid for their story. Not to say that this makes the whole thing false, it's just a far cry from a bunch of insiders. It was one who is unknown. Also, speaking of insiders, Myrna doesn't seem to be limited in her ability to speak or write about her life, but she rarely, if ever, mentions Morgan in her interviews after the divorce. She refers to him as my ex-husband in one interview I came across, and that's the only mention I noticed of Morgan. So why hasn't she written a salacious tell-all book? Is it just her love for her former husband keeping her back? What's stopping her? Exactly, nothing. So this leads me to kind of think this is a bullshit rumor.
It also looks like this affair that Morgan had with his step-granddaughter resulted in another relationship ending. I'm not entirely sure why the mistress and Morgan had a falling out, but the reports claim it's directly tied to his affair with his step-granddaughter. So maybe this woman learned about it and realized that she doesn't want to be with a man like this.
Myrna told Morgan to leave E'Dena alone, but he does not, and they have a secret affair for 10 years.
Myrna confronted Morgan and he agreed to leave E'Dena alone, but the relationship continued for years.
This affair is the cause of Morgan and Myrna's divorce.
The alleged affair is reportedly what caused Myrna to file for divorce. The source says Morgan is trying desperately to keep his divorce out of open court.
You went through a pretty high profile and apparently very expensive divorce. And did you feel done in? Did you feel like you'd been unfairly treated?
Slightly, yeah. Yeah. But I'm cool.
Have you been able to have an ongoing relationship, a friendship?
No.
Nothing?
I don't want it.
27 years together?
Yeah, but, there were no kids involved that we have to worry about, and that glue isn't there, There's no real need to.
And on that token, there are also many other simpler causes for Morgan Freeman's divorce. Supposedly, he and his wife had an open relationship, but he fell in love with someone he was sleeping with, which was against their rules. Some sources say that this woman was Myrna's best friend, but it's unclear. At that time, Morgan also had a relationship with Mary Joyce Hayes, a school teacher, and other sources say that it was this affair that broke up his marriage. There was also the car crash incident where he crashed a car as he drove another woman to stay at a house on his land.
Morgan Freeman has been in the news lately. Yes. First, his late night car wreck with a lady friend that was not his wife. Followed immediately by his pricey divorce from a lady that was his wife. Oh, that doesn't get that. That's the only way it really works. That's a bummer.
Mr. Freeman lived much closer to the interstate and offered to allow me to stay at one of his 3 homes on his ranch so that I would have an easier drive to work the next morning. He was a perfect gentleman, and I accepted this kind offer.
At approximately 11:30 p.m., while traveling east on Mississippi Highway 32, Mr. Freeman lost control of the car and ran off the right side of the highway.
Right here is where he nosed in with the right front fender, and then it bounced to the left side. It was rather slick on the highway. A rainstorm had just previously moved through. There was about 6 to 8 inches of water in the ditch, and we were wading water at the time. That reminds me, Mr. Freeman was more concerned about the people around him than he was himself.
The tabloids went nuts with this, but she has denied anything sexual was going on.
I want to clear my name from the rumors and false accusations that have been made about me and my relationship with Mr. Morgan Freeman in the press. I was not and never have been his mistress, nor was I the cause of his marital breakup. I am also not Miss Daisy, as I have been referred to in the press.
And this is the major problem with using tabloids as a major source. They are factually questionable and more often salacious than newsworthy. Afterwards, Morgan and E'Dena date, and she wants to have his baby and get married, and they blatantly show up together in public.
What's interesting about this case is it seems like Morgan doesn't hide his relationship with E'Dena. They're very public about their close bond. There have been several events where E'Dena has joined Morgan Freeman on the red carpet, and she's even been part of some of his projects. She was an aspiring actress, so it kind of makes sense, he was helping her get into the scene. When he would bring her around to events, they thought it was a cute, grandfather and granddaughter relationship, but really it was much more than that.
E'Dena Hines, Morgan Freeman's beloved granddaughter, often walked the red carpet at his side. She even told Inside Edition how good he looked.
Fashionable guy, he doesn't have to worry about it.
It's so uncomfy to see them interact on the red carpet because now that we know that they have more than just a granddaughter and grandfather relationship, it's bizarre to see. I wish I knew what Morgan was telling E'Dena throughout the years.
Morgan has led her to believe that he wants to marry her, is what we heard from a family insider.
It was E'Dena's goal to become pregnant by Morgan Freeman. She thought if she were to get pregnant by him, then he would marry her and they would be together forever.
You've been married twice. You think you'll get married again?
No, never.
That's it?
No.
Freeman was seen at the Dark Knight premiere with E'Dena, where witnesses said the two looked unusually close.
And the report is that he was remarkably close, even a little bit too close. They were holding hands, they were cuddling, they were giggling.
And while some say that E'Dena and Morgan are uncomfortably close or appear too close when they're out in public, this is really a matter of opinion. And for me, it just doesn't flesh out. For instance, we can look at their interactions using the green line rule, which is an idea as specious as this story, but whatever. Likewise, they also don't kiss or have any sexually charged interactions. And as I'll show later, Morgan is a very expressive man, as you probably know from watching his films. And really, other than speculation, there is no there with this. Just look at it. And now let's take a look at how Morgan embraces E'Dena versus other women like his dates, co-stars, and his producing partner. Specifically, look at how he purposely avoids touching E'Dena in a sexual manner, yet how he doesn't seem to care when touching Laurie McCreary, his producing partner, or several of the other women he's been on the red carpet with. So is he really being overtly sexual with E'Dena here? I don't see it. If you do, point it out with a timestamp and an explanation of why you think that. But for me personally, I just don't see any there. Then they break up and deny the relationship publicly.
But eventually basically their relationship ended. That was also the same year that E'Dena and Morgan had denied their relationship. So at this point, it seems like they were done.
And in 2012, they both clearly deny the relationship publicly. Granted, this isn't a 100% guarantee that they didn't have a relationship, but it is a very strong denial from both of them.
Morgan Freeman's step-granddaughter is found stabbed to death outside her New York City apartment, and police say her boyfriend is the killer.
Lamar was high on PCP when he killed E'Dena, and this is a type of drug that makes you hallucinate. It can change your mood.
Say something about devil be gone or Jesus and God, and I said, uh-oh.
He was like kneeling over her, screaming about God has arisen. I mean, he was totally off the ranch.
I watched somebody get murdered. And there was nothing I could do but call the police.
Even though this situation seems entirely separate from Morgan's relationship with E'Dena, it's not.
When Lamar goes to trial for E'Dena's murder, however, his attorney brings up that Morgan and E'Dena had an affair for years, and this is part of a series of emotional distresses that the relationship put Lamar under. And the reason why his attorney brings this up isn't totally clear, but it's my best understanding that they were trying to go for a lesser sentence than first or second degree murder, claiming this was more of a crime of passion of a sort.
And Lamar admitted that they had a violent relationship. He claims that their disagreements are very emotionally intense. Before she was murdered, Morgan Freeman's step-granddaughter told her boyfriend that the actor had been secretly sleeping with her, confirming years-old claims about their affair. Lamar and E'Dena were talking about having a break before E'Dena's death, so they were having some issues up until her passing. We also saw messages where E'Dena was telling Lamar that she was having issues with an older man. I wonder who this older man is. E'Dena was quoted writing, "I didn't ask him for advice. I blocked him for myself, not for you, because men who equal grandpa feelings don't need to be in my life at all." So at this point, she was telling Lamar that she had blocked Morgan Freeman because she doesn't need to have those like emotional feelings with a grandpa.
And Lamar's entire defense rests on this idea that his relationship with E'Dena was emotionally charged and chaotic and violent, and that her murder happened as an accident, not as a purposeful killing. To make this argument, his defense enlists a therapist and some vague text messages to imply that their relationship was on the rocks, specifically because Morgan and E'Dena had a relationship. But that doesn't take into account a lot of things, like the fact that they were currently on a break and that they were having troubles beyond this. But when you look further into it, this argument makes little to no sense from the text messages themselves. For instance, Sloan makes the claim she was having an issue with an older man. I wonder who that is. Me too. It's probably not Morgan, as she'd likely refer to him as her grandfather or Morgan or something like that. It's sort of weird to skirt around his name and the truth of something that both parties supposedly know. Likewise, I don't ask him for advice is ambiguous. Also, what's the specific context of these messages? We don't know. We just have these messages and we're taking a large leap to assume that it is clearly talking about Morgan Freeman.
Lamar replied to E'Dena and wrote, quote, "When it comes to your grandfather, there's a submissive love that will always be there." So at this point, Lamar realized that there's a relationship between them that he can't even touch, that he can't affect because there's some type of submissive love there, which sounds really like grooming, in my opinion.
And the discussion about submissive love around feelings about your grandfather, that actually makes quite a bit of sense. You would have a submissive love towards a father figure or a grandfather figure. That's what parental love is about. I'm really confused at the idea of this. Likewise, again, it's not entirely clear that Lamar is referring to Morgan Freeman here, or that E'Dena is. Lamar could be referring to the fact that a grandfather is somebody you have a submissive love relationship to, and just meant that in general. And it's much more likely that it's actually about an older man who is trying to play on her grandpa feelings to get into her good graces in her bed. For instance, an older man that tried to woo her during their break. This would make a lot of sense given their text messages.
Mr. Freeman, do you have any comment regarding the defense by Mr. Davenport's defense team alleging text messages corroborating a relationship between you and Ms. Hines?
I think you know what you're talking about.
Okay. Thank you.
7. What's said in court is typically true.
Lamar's lawyer, Beth, said in court that E'Dena had told Lamar and others that her grandfather engaged in a sexually inappropriate relationship with her. This is damning information because what's said in court typically is true, because if it's not, you're committing perjury.
Sloan also says what's said in court is typically true because of perjury. Sure, but Lamar's attorney argued this. Lamar didn't say this on the stand. Lamar has no chance of a perjury charge, and if his attorney believes Lamar, then there's no chance of perjury there either. So this is a foolish argument. Perjury is also very rarely prosecuted and is rather hard to prove in most cases. Furthermore, who even cares about a perjury charge when the alternative is second-degree murder charges? He could face an additional 4 years that would likely go concurrent with his sentence. What a penalty for lying. It's claimed that E'Dena told Lamar and others about this affair. So why has no one else come forward? If it was such a distressing thing, not a single person who heard this claim could testify about it? 8. The murder is convenient for Morgan Freeman.
Thinking back to 2012, there's still the possibility that E'Dena could come forward and speak out. So it's even more convenient that she was killed. There's no doubt in my mind that he's upset with her passing, but he also probably feels relieved, because imagine if she grew up some more and she was like, you know what, I want to write a book about this, or tell a movie, or have a documentary, or she lived through the Me Too era. There was so much opportunity for her to come forward later on, but she was murdered, which again is super convenient for Morgan Freeman.
Next, is the murder truly convenient for Morgan Freeman? And what does saying something like that imply about the case? Maybe that he was involved, or at least hoped for something like this. Maybe not, but this is a possible way to read convenient in a way I think a lot of people do.
I really shouldn't be doing this. It's very undignified.
And if there is no validity to this claim, as I'm suggesting in this video, it's actually a rather foul implication to make. Likewise, there's a whole conspiracy theory that E'Dena wasn't killed at all, and the whole murder was faked. But of course, for what purpose? It's definitely not clear. But it's also built on faulty premises that are so clear, I hope I don't have to point them out to you, as I don't really look forward to trying to record myself pouring fake and real blood on asphalt.
She was murdered, watch this, at 3:33 in the morning. And the media was very deliberate to say the time that she was murdered. I don't know why that's important. I know why, but you know what I mean? This is the craziest thing I've ever heard in my life. Watch this. I can't even say it. She was stabbed 33 times, 3 in the morning. That's all I'm going to say about it. Google it. Just look it up. Just look up the symbolism in Satanism. You could even type in Illuminati symbolism, numerology. But the number 3 is very significant. It's interesting that people find the whole Me Too situation more interesting and newsworthy than the fact that his step-granddaughter was murdered, stabbed 33 times at 3:33 in the morning. Don't get me lying. If I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong, but if I'm not mistaken, it was on her 33rd birthday. Just look it up. Just look it up. If y'all think I'm lying, check this stuff out. It's crazy.
It's almost as if the number 3 has significance in almost every spiritual path known to human beings. Also, way to convincingly argue a case where literally every premise is a lie. Kind of sounds like the tabloids, doesn't it?
Chris, everything I say is a lie. Except that. And 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 that.
And we now know where actor Morgan Freeman was in the hours just before the tragic killing. Martha's Vineyard, celebrating the 80th birthday of power broker Vernon Jordan. Bill and Hillary were there too, seen here dancing at the party.
And I have to say, it's really fishy that not a single conspiracy theorist grabbed onto this fact.
Bill and Hillary were there too. Bill and Hillary were there too.
9. Lamar's mother's statement that this is an accident and all Morgan Freeman's fault.
Lamar's mother had some things to say, and she claims that this is not like her son. He doesn't do things like this.
Wait, you're trying to tell me that your son doesn't regularly kill his girlfriends in drug-induced exorcisms? What kind of weak-ass man did you raise? I don't think many people's mothers raised them to do something like this, and it shouldn't be like anyone to murder people during exorcisms. So really, what is the point of even bringing this up? Furthermore, his mother also deeply misunderstands what it means to blame a drug for issues and still hold people accountable for their deeds. The Jared Wyatt case I covered is a good example of this. Drug-induced psychosis is very rarely given out and very rarely offered as an actual way for people to escape their sentencing.
So the threshold is they have to have this mental illness where perhaps they are in a psychotic state where maybe they're hearing voices telling them to do something. And at the same time, they literally don't know right from wrong in the middle of their psychotic state or in the middle of their mental illness. So those thresholds have to be met.
The mental competency is unclear, and they're trying to treat the individual to get them to a place where they are capable.
And ultimately, like, him killing her is due to Morgan Freeman's relationship with her.
She says Morgan Freeman molested her and he caused this. He did this. Lamar Davenport's mother yelled to reporters as she was ushered out of the courtroom. All right, so you guys just heard what she had to say. And I know a lot of people would dismiss it as just the rantings of a crazy mother. She's just mad that her son got 20 years. Her son obviously killed her, you know, because he did it in front of people. But like I said, the case never sat well with me because, you know, who just kills somebody while doing an exorcism in the middle of the street?
Also, of course Lamar's mother believes his defense. That's not really a very helpful argument here. It makes perfect sense that Lamar's mother believes his defense. She's his mother. And most people in a true crime audience would be familiar with several cases where mothers try to argue that their child is innocent even though they are clearly guilty.
He's a loving child. He's a good person. Very respectful and respect others. I know my son didn't do this.
He is guilty of murder, and if you had any testimony that you wanted to give for the jury to consider, the trial was the time to do that.
If they have accused our son of a crime that he didn't commit.
He's been convicted by the jury.
Okay. He's a very caring young man.
But on the same token, Lamar's mother also doesn't seem to have any direct evidence of the affair. E'Dena never seemed to confess the affair to her. She doesn't seem to have any outside knowledge of it other than her belief that her son is innocent.
But we know that something happened here because it's been mentioned now in 2 court hearings. The divorce proceedings with Myrna and then this situation with Lamar. So we've heard in court multiple times that they have had a relationship.
Actually, this was only said once in court. Morgan and Myrna's divorce is sealed and was private. There is zero information from their divorce trial that's public. Only some of the evidence from Lamar's trial has gone public, and this evidence is really specious. Nobody just makes up stuff like this because it's defamatory.
Morgan Freeman's team put out a statement, quote, "The recent reports of any pending marriage or romantic relationship of me to anyone are defamatory fabrications from the tabloid media designed to sell papers." But ultimately, like, who makes this up? Like, nobody just goes and makes this up for fun because that is defamatory. There wouldn't be so many people and so many insiders and sources sharing this, including Lamar, if it wasn't true.
Except that people make up stories like this all the time, especially at the National Enquirer. I mean, they are a sister publication of the magazine that gave us Bat Boy. Not only that, but the author of the original article was apparently fired in 2014 for supposedly interviewing David Katz, but actually interviewing a fake source about the death of Philip Seymour Hoffman. And as you can see from his LinkedIn profile, he left the National Enquirer in 2014, the same year that this lawsuit was settled. And this incident of fake news and the resulting lawsuit ended up costing the National Enquirer so much money that Katz used it to fund a grant for playwrights to use for living expenses.
He's got a problem when it comes to making women feel uncomfortable and harassing them and things like that.
Morgan makes women uncomfortable with his pervy attitude, making him a sexual deviant. Therefore, Morgan should be exposed as a sexual predator who preyed on his teenage stepdaughter. says Sloan.
According to CNN, 16 women say they either experienced or witnessed inappropriate behavior or sexual harassment by the actor.
Several of them said that Freeman made constant comments about their bodies and clothing choices. 8 said that they were victims of harassment or inappropriate behavior, and Dawn, 2 of those 8 said that they were subjected to unwanted touching by Freeman.
A female production staffer from its 2012 movie, Now You See Me, tells CNN that the actor, quote, sexually harassed her and her female assistant on numerous occasions by making comments about their bodies.
Freeman released a statement yesterday saying he's devastated by the allegations. He added he sometimes made comments he thought were lighthearted, but maintains he never assaulted anyone.
Saying, quote, anyone who knows me or has worked with me knows I am not someone who would intentionally offend or knowingly make anyone feel uneasy. I apologize to anyone who felt uncomfortable or disrespected. That was never my intent.
So with the sexual harassment claims, it seems like some people were legitimately bothered.
3 individuals who attended a birthday party thrown for Morgan Freeman at his production company claim that staffers were asked to stand in a circle, and Freeman allegedly walked up to the women, looked them up and down, and stood within an inch of their face before moving on to the next woman in the circle.
A young production assistant tells the outlet she worked on Freeman's movie Going in Style and alleges that the actor, quote, subjected her to unwanted touching and comments about her figure and clothing on a near daily basis.
In one incident, Dawn, she says that Freeman actually attempted to try to lift her skirt and asked her if she was wearing underwear. She claims that this alleged incident actually took place in front of his co-star in the movie, Alan Arkin. We tried to reach Arkin for comment, and he couldn't be reached.
The production assistant who had her skirt lifted up was probably rather taken aback at that incident and felt harassed.
Another source claims that he witnessed Freeman massage the shoulder of an intern who appeared visibly uncomfortable with the touching. Another female employee says he walked up to her on set and asked her, quote, how do you feel about sexual harassment? When she appeared flustered by the question, Freeman then turned to the others on the set and said, see guys, this is how you do it. The source told us she was stunned by that.
There are some clips we could call harassment, but it really depends on the feelings of the women in these situations themselves.
Thank goodness. You married?
No.
Fool around with older guys? Just ask her.
What do you mean?
Mine. Look at yourself. Now, how you all manage to do that all the time?
All of this?
No, you got a dress that's halfway between your knee and your hip. And you sit down right across from me, and you cross your leg.
Are they actually offended here? I can't tell definitively, can you? They don't seem to return his affection, that's clear. And this article reads, Croissant, a Delaware native, has been quiet about the incident, though she happens to be pretty active on social media. In other words, it seems like she has no comment on this incident.
Mock tells ET, quote, I was deeply disappointed that someone who was seen as America's grandfather was susceptible to such disturbing behavior and felt comfortable enough to do that as cameras were rolling.
Other incidents were clearly taken out of context or misunderstood, and while I do think that there are some clips here that make Morgan look bad, Chloe Molasses' claim that Morgan is sexually harassing her here is frankly stupid.
Morgan Freeman made comments to me during a junket last year. As soon as I walked in the room, he began to make sexually suggestive comments, and as an entertainment reporter for over a decade, it was unlike anything that I've ever experienced. It was that exchange that stood out to me, just being so brazen. And that's what led us to just call around and do our job and look into it, and what we found is a pattern. He says to me, boy, do I wish I was there, while looking me up and down. I was 6 months pregnant at the time, and his co-stars, Alan Arkin and Michael Caine, are actually seated right next to him, and they actually look at him. I want you all to take note of Freeman's eyes.
One time I congratulated the woman on being pregnant, and she wasn't. And so I've never done it again. For 50 years, I've never done it.
You've learned your lesson.
I learned my lesson.
Lord, do I wish I was there.
This movie is...
Look at his eyes. He's several feet from her, looking into bright lights. It's kind of hard to see people in that kind of situation.
He doesn't even look like he can see that clearly. It don't look like he was like looking her up and down in a sexual manner.
Whereas here he is with Tyra Martin, literally looking her up and down. Notice the clear as day difference.
I do
I know people want to make a statement, but it is the Oscars.
You married?
Pleasure meeting you.
Mine. Look at yourself.
Also, as basically anyone with a brain will pick up, Morgan is clearly responding to the comment from his co-star.
It's clear that he was saying that he wishes he was there when his co-star mistakenly thought a woman who was not pregnant, he thought she was pregnant.
Just in the context of that, you might think that he was responding to what the co-star said about, I wish I was there when you were making the comments about the woman being pregnant and she was not.
And it has nothing to do with Chloe, both literally and figuratively.
Right, exactly. And that's why I have to set this up for everyone, because from the moment I walked in the room, he said to me when I shook his hand, I wish I was there, more than once, while looking me up and down and also not letting go of my hand. Then he says this comment to me on tape, and then he made more comments to me about my body and then calling me ripe as I was leaving.
I don't understand how the girl could take this as she thought that it was directed to her, and I don't understand how this made it to, even be pushed out into the media as a valid sexual harassment claim, when it's clear as day that he wasn't even speaking to her and that he was speaking about his co-star's experience on, thinking a girl was pregnant when she wasn't.
And in the case of Tyra Martin, they appear to be deliberately misread because they were something she had to come out and deny.
Tyra Martin. And she said that over the course of a decade, she interviewed Freeman multiple times and that he always made sexually charged comments to her. But she described to us that she was always, quote, in on the joke, that she perceived it as more as flirtation. Now, that incident was not caught on tape, but there were other exchanges of her where it was caught on tape where he was being very flirtatious.
How are you? I'm better now. Thanks. I don't have any magic tricks. I kind of feel like I showed up for dinner without it. I wouldn't worry about that. You got magic written all over you, child. I'm enjoying bachelor life immensely. So I get to look at you and drool. It's well received. Oh, thank you. Hope to see you a little closer next time. Like the way you think.
I know people want to make a statement, but it is the Oscars.
You married?
Some misreporting got out that I was uncomfortable or that he had made sexual remarks to me every time, and that's just not the case. I never said that. And it got picked up, and here's where I've learned how careful we have to be, because something gets picked up and then someone else picks it up and then it gets somewhere else and now it's in print and it looks like the truth and it's not. The interviews were always fun for me. I understand how for some people, not even just women, men even, that kind of interaction might not be fun or easygoing, but it always felt like we were in on a joke, that we were just kind of exchanging like that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry for anyone that's had an unfortunate experience or feels harassed or assaulted. That wasn't my experience.
But there was one time that she felt it really crossed a line. She said that this time in particular, he asked her not to pull her skirt down as she stood up to leave an interview with him.
You said that there was one instance where you felt uncomfortable, or at least that's what the CNN article.
There was one instance that I told her gave me pause, and it's similar to some of the things that other people have said, that I stood up from an interview and had on a dress, and you know how when you get up, you kind of pull your skirt down. And he made a remark about, oh, well, don't pull it down now. And that was kind of like, But I never felt uncomfortable or in danger.
So do you feel kind of offended that this person took your comments out of context and you're grouped in with, and you know, you get put in a category?
Yeah. I don't know if offended is the right word, but just, you know, I respect the women that have been brave enough to say, this thing happened to me and it was wrong, and I support that. But it wasn't me. It's not me.
It wasn't your experience.
It wasn't my experience. So to be grouped in it, I don't feel offended, but just disappointed.
I had an incredible line of teachers growing up. And my mom was, and my grandmother. I'm a ladies' man. It's most of my life is outstanding women and a few outstanding men.
You like women?
A lot.
Me too.
I've always felt you're a natural ladies' man, in the sense that women really love you. The women I know who know you adore you. And you always seem to have a natural affinity around women. Would you accept that?
Yes. I absolutely adore women. I just do. I'm a mama's boy. I absolutely love women. But I also have an abiding respect for them. I think that's what comes across more than, I'm not what you would call a ladies' man. No. I'm not a real big skirt chaser.
A small-time skirt chaser?
There is a secret. Don't chase women.
Really?
They'll chase you.
Is that your strategy?
Yeah.
Does it work?
Works very well.
What is the technique of letting them chase you? How do you make yourself known as potentially available?
Just don't do it. Don't, you meet a lady, you express to her how wonderful she looks, or how you respond to the way she looks, or whatever it is, and then go on about your business.
And does it ever fail?
Curious, they're like horses in a pasture sometimes. You walk into a pasture and the horse sees you. He's coming over to investigate. And if you see a lady and you don't go, drooling all over her, she's going to want to know why.
Basically, a lifetime of non-drooling has been a successful strategy.
Yeah.
Any other tips?
You need to have a large amount of respect for ladies. They respond very well to that. Thank goodness. You married?
No.
Fool around with older guys? Just ask.
Pleasure to meet you.
Mine. Look at yourself. Now, how you all manage to do that all the time?
All of this?
No, you got a dress that's halfway between your knee and your hip. And you sit down right across from me and you cross your leg. Get to look at you and drool.
Get to look at you and drool.
So it's entirely possible he might not have thought he was doing anything wrong. And in a way, this is a great part about calling someone out for their bad behavior. They then have a chance to learn from and change their behavior in the future. So many people get lost in the criminal and the canceling elements of the Me Too movement, but there really is a chance to heal and to grow and to move forward, reintegrating problem aspects into the society so they're no longer problematic. Because really a lot of the work with things like Me Too is about addressing issues between the genders and resolving them. Sometimes that means totally canceling someone or they need to go to prison. Sometimes that means people can learn from their mistakes.
You promised you'd join me in the studio face-to-face for a one-on-one interview. And here you are, Morgan Freeman.
Yay.
An actor keeping his word.
Yes.
I'm stunned.
Yeah. We won't talk about how it came about.
Well, we won't. Well, I know it's got nothing to do with me. Everything to do with one of my very attractive booking team, right?
Yes. I must admit. The most stunning woman I've ever met.
Well, don't say that. It'll go to her head, please. Please don't say that.
It'll go to her head.
I really do wonder how much of these recent claims are because A, he's well past the silver fox phase and is now literally an old man, and B, because he's from a much older time period. I mean, the guy was born in 1937, 4 years before the end of the Great Depression. He's lived through some radical cultural changes, and it only makes sense in his old age that he's probably disconnected from the current culture. In fact, this is a reason people are giving right now for an idea that we need younger people in office, because a lot of people that are that age are really out of touch with what's going on with younger people and with the culture in general. And obviously, I'm not trying to say here that it's okay for men to harass women. I'm just pointing out that he's pretty blatant about it, as almost all of these complaints are from women in public.
This was happening in front of cameras. Mm-hmm. So you think from Morgan Freeman's perspective, he obviously doesn't think he's doing anything wrong in front of cameras. Had it not been in front of cameras, do you think you would have interpreted it differently?
Well, just honestly, I don't think I would have. There's no reason to sit down for 5 minutes. Sure. Yeah, with Morgan Freeman for me without a camera.
But is that what made you maybe feel safe, or just made it feel like, because hey, this is entertainment, this is TV, we're doing the thing here?
Yeah, I think that's part of it, and. I didn't have a problem. You watch the video, I'm laughing. It was fun.
This has been going on for a very long time with Morgan Freeman. Mm-hmm. I mean, we've joked about it and we've laughed about it here
for years.
For years and years.
Get to look at you and drool.
Well, he hasn't looked at her yet. He hasn't come above the neck once.
Well, it's well received.
No. She was playing patty cake with him, so.
Well, you've got to get the interview, Larry.
The 78-year-old currently divorced Morgan. Look at that steely concentration that he's got. You can see why he's such a good actor. not distracted by one thing that she said. Do you think that some people don't get the joke? That
I think
Morgan
it might
Freeman
not be a joke to some
maybe
people.
is joking?
Yeah, and maybe it's not a joke to some people. You know, you've got to be comfortable enough to give and take like that for it to be a joke. And if you're not, and someone's giving you don't want to take, then that's a problem. And they should speak out about it.
And it's interesting, too, if people say, well, you were offended. Well, it's not everyone's experience, right? So don't give me a voice that's not mine.
Yeah.
And it should be mentioned that many people really like working with Morgan Freeman, including women like Ashley Judd and his business partner, Lori McCreary.
I really like Morgan Freeman.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes when I see him, my eyes just spontaneously well with tears. I adore the man, and we had a wonderful time working together again recently on Dolphin Tale. He is everything you would hope he is.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
And all that said, even if he is guilty of these accusations, it still doesn't prove that he had a sexual relationship with E'Dena. At best, it's circumstantial evidence, so it's not even really that helpful. Therefore, Morgan should be exposed as a sexual predator who preyed on his teenage stepdaughter, says Sloan.
Morgan Freeman should be exposed for what he's done. He had an inappropriate relationship with his step-granddaughter. Morgan raised this little girl, and once she became a teen, he preyed on her. They had an affair for over 10 years until she was viciously murdered, which is very convenient for Morgan Freeman.
I disagree.
Morgan Freeman should be exposed for what he's done.
He started fooling around with a woman named Lolita Polk. He told Esquire magazine, she said, "I'm pregnant, so I left town." Morgan moved to New York and lived his life without a care in the world. He met another woman, and you guessed it, he got her pregnant as well. Morgan followed the same pattern. He packed up and left town. And Morgan didn't have a relationship with his son until many years later. Morgan finally met his first son, Alfonso, in 1978, 19 years after he abandoned him. They were able to form a tight bond, and Alfonso has appeared in several films alongside his dad, such as The Bucket List, Seven, and The Shawshank Redemption.
Production assistant tells the outlet she worked on Freeman's movie Going in Style and alleges that the actor, quote, subjected her to unwanted touching and comments about her figure and clothing on a near daily basis.
In one incident, Dawn, she says that Freeman actually attempted to try to lift her skirt and asked her if she was wearing underwear. She claims that this alleged incident actually took place in front of his co-star in the movie, Alan Arkin.
Another source claims that he witnessed Freeman massage the shoulder of an intern who appeared visibly uncomfortable with the touching. Another female employee says he walked up to her on set and asked her, quote, "How do you feel about sexual harassment?" When she appeared flustered by the question, Freeman then turned to the others on the set and said, "See guys, this is how you do it."
There is no credible evidence that Morgan Freeman had a sexual relationship with his granddaughter, and frankly, it's kind of gross to claim that it was convenient for her to die because this saved him from being Me Too'd. And again, if there were any validity to this claim, Myrna could have written a tell-all book by now. Even the slowest of writers could write a book in a decade. I mean, if you think about it, if the book was 400 pages, she could have written 40 pages a year and finished it by now. So consider the facts again quickly, and think to yourself, what do I actually believe here? Who do you ultimately agree with? Is this a specious claim as I argue, or is Sloan right?
There's so much more I could talk about when it comes to Morgan Freeman because this is just one story about his granddaughter. But I feel really bad for E'Dena and her family and everyone involved. It's such an unfortunate situation, and if he did have a relationship with her, then he's going to hell.
Wait. What in the fuck is this if bullshit? How do you go from direct statements like Morgan Freeman had a sexual relationship with his granddaughter and we need to expose him to if he did this? If? Why expose someone on a hunch? But seriously though, what do you think? Did I just spend 2 weeks investigating something that was stupid and pointless? Or did I miss something clear as day? I do have to say though that I'm really astounded at the lack of research that Sloan would put into a case like this when he's exposing somebody who supposedly did something really awful. I would think that you would want to make sure that you're actually exposing someone who actually did something wrong. Yet in this situation, there's basically no proof of this with the exception of a National Enquirer article, which if you believe the stuff that's printed in the National Enquirer, boy do I
I have a bridge to sell you. And thank you for checking out this video. If you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, and share with a friend. You'll probably love this series where I debunk all of the conspiracy theories around the Astroworld tragedy. So if you're interested in more debunking or exploring these kind of celebrity conspiracy, true crime topics in more detail, then definitely check that out.